Ladies and gentlemen, this is your tactician, Mr. G Coalition, brother number 17, looking fresh, staying clean, ready to talk a little bit about professional wrestling. But before I go there, actually, you know what? I'm gonna go through what I'm not gonna talk about in great detail right now. I'm not gonna talk about, for example, there's a lot of things when it comes to like what's going on in WWE that I could possibly address. Like, for example, we could talk about the World Paperweight Championship situation, Seth Rollins being the very likely the next champion, the first champion to be crowned at Night of Champions. Don't like that. Could talk about the stupidity surrounding the fact that that they had SmackDown take part in the tournament, and a SmackDown guy could end up being moved right over to Raw by winning the title. Don't like that, because we all know it's not actually going to happen. AJ Styles is just there to freaking eat the pin for Seth Rollins at this point. And AJ Styles, my best wrestler in the world for the whole previous decade. Like, come on. I'm not going to be happy watching him do the job to Rollins. I don't like Rollins right now for various reasons. So I'm not going to be happy watching Rollins beat Styles. So that's already a fact right there. Now I'm going to go into much greater detail about that. Don't really care much to do so. The fact that the whole Roman Reigns currently imploding the bloodline from within storyline is just like Cody Rhodes' no reason feud with Brock Lesnar. Something that would have made more sense had Roman dropped the title at WrestleMania. But I'm not going to go into great detail talking about that either. I'm also not going to go into great detail talking about the fact that the Judgment Day versus Latino World Order feud, which basically was the spinoff of the Dominic versus Rey Mysterio. Well, no, it's a spinoff, more like expansion, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to go into great detail about that, even though it's something that I do like. In fact, I actually think everything they did surrounding that whole thing was actually kind of fun. First, the Dominic and Rey feud at WrestleMania, you know how that went. The fact that this whole the storytelling was told so perfectly when it comes to like making sure that everybody hated Dom and wanted Rey to freaking whoop his son's ass. And then you expand that by having the Legado del Fantasma, along with several part-time associates, be inducted into the Latino World Order and end up feuding against Judgment Day all the way up until post-SmackDown. That situation has been very, very fun, especially what they did with the shows in Puerto Rico with the SmackDown and then Backlash, with the Judgment Day versus LWO being center stage. Love that fact. Love that whole thing that they did with that. But again, not even going to get into great detail about that, except I will note one thing. It actually didn't click with me until a couple weeks after Backlash. Rhea Ripley versus Zelina Vega was a match that the House of Black in AEW was very interested in watching, between Aleister Black's wife, Malachi Black's wife, and Buddy Matthews' girlfriend. That's who's Buddy is dating Rhea Ripley in real life, not to be confused with the storyline of Rhea dating Dominic, who is actually engaged outside the business in real life. And Black, he's married to Zelina, or should I say, no, I'm not going to use real names. I mean, I easily could, but I'm not going to do it. I'd just be doing it to prove a point. Plus, I'm already in a flow. I'm not going to break that up. Point is this: I didn't even really think about that connection until a couple weeks after Backlash had already gone down. That just goes to show you what a good job they've done building that with that particular story. And it didn't get fucked up by... It's one of the few things that WWE did not fuck up by WrestleMania by the bad decisions that were made on Sunday, because that whole thing actually went through Saturday. And even though I don't like the fact that I don't like the fact that they kind of haven't kept it consistent with Ray not being willing to fight his son all the time. They didn't keep that consistent going in the Backlash, but that was like the one flaw in everything else in the whole Judgment Day and LWO business. And I thought that they executed that really well, and it was actually really fun. Again, that's not what I came here to fully talk about. I'm going to actually veer off course from pro wrestling for about another 5 minutes before I get to the topic that I do want to address when it comes to the programs. Now let's go over to professional basketball. Let's go to the NBA playoffs. Last time I was here, and I think I mentioned a little bit about what was going on with the playoffs. I mentioned the fact that my Miami Heat were in the thick of it, about to enter a second round series with the New York Knicks. Obviously, it's been a few weeks since then, and the Heat once again shocked the entire world, stealing game one in New York, taking control of the series and on their home floor in Miami, up 3-1 after 4 games. Ended up losing at the Garden 3-2, closing out when they went back to the Kaseya Center in Miami. Heat moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals for the second straight year in a row, the third out of 4 seasons since Jimmy Butler has been there. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the first time any team has ever been in first place, then in 8th place. 2 consecutive seasons they made it to the conference finals. This is also one of the first times. Actually, not. Okay, no, not first times. This is also a clear sign that look at how great this organization has been. You got Eric Spoelstra as the best coach in the league. Jimmy Butler is one of the most all-heart, old-school type superstars in the game today. You got a bunch of role players. Bam Adebayo is like a number 3 option as playing in the number 2 role. And then after that, you got a whole bunch of extra... you got a whole bunch of snipers, shooters, and hustlers. And that team has basically... That's been the formula that the Heat have taken to make it to 3 out of 4 ECFs. Made an NBA Finals. Won 2 games in the NBA Finals, even though everybody was anticipating a sweep back in 2020 against LeBron James and the Lakers. Who, by the way, LeBron's not getting back to the finals this year. Come on. It's not going to happen. The Heat are going to make it to the finals. It's going to be Heat Nuggets in the NBA Finals, I strongly predict. And today, this is being recorded before the game. It'll be uploaded during the game, Game 3 between the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics back at the Kaseya Center. And let's get to how we got here. The next step to how we got here, the freaking Boston Celtics. We not only took 1 in Boston, we took both of the first 2 games of the series in Boston, and now is back in Miami for Game 3 and Game 4. It is actually a chance to potentially get a sweep at home. Now, I'm not going to guarantee that a sweep is coming, because I'm not trying to jinx anything. If I'm putting on my analytical brain, I'm thinking this goes 3-1. But if I put on my cocky Heat fan hat, I'm going to say, you know what? We could win this one. And if we could win this one, we could win the next one. And we could completely crush the Celtics' hearts, because they don't have the discipline to handle 4 quarters of a grind out game the way that the Heat do, the way that Spo and Butler do. They don't have it like that. That's what we've seen. They have the ability to pull out when they're at home. They have the ability to pull away for a little bit, get a little bit of distance, get a little bit of breathing around in the middle of the game. But then Miami never fucking gives up. Too much hustle, too much belief, too much Jimmy and Spo refusing to die, too much of these snipers that are able to freaking get open and get streaky and get hot at any given time. This Heat team is too damn good to be underestimated, to be taken lightly, to be, frankly, disrespected, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. And not that I blame anybody for ever underestimating this Heat team. Hell, even us Heat fans weren't really like super high on our chances. Falling down, lowest of momentum, heading into the postseason to where we barely avoided sliding from competing for the competing for the fifth seed, all the way to losing 2 games in the play-in and being caught right out the playoffs. We barely avoided that. And then we're doing what we're doing? This is incredible. This is incredible. I made a comment in the channel of a guy whose channel called Miami Heat Talk, saying, in short, that this is the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever seen, but I'm loving absolutely every single second of it. And you know what? That's exactly what it is. But we about to find out the next step on this ride. Is this going to be a grind? Are the Boston Celtics going to try to turn this into a series in Miami, or can the Heat put a dagger in the heart of the Celtics? I'm about to find out in a couple hours. Let's just go with that. I'm about to find out in a couple hours. But yeah. So that's my outside the grapple talk for a moment. So now let me get to what I actually want to get on. This is going to be, I'm probably going to take like somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes on this. This whole AEW situation right now. There are no heroes when it comes to this whole beef, this whole kerfuffle, this whole debacle of a situation when it comes to CM Punk, The Elite, and Tony Khan. You want to talk about the media scrum? Let's go back to the media scrum in December after All Out. CM Punk freaking goes out of his way to blow up the entire positive perception of who the Elite are. Now, personally, like if we're talking about like, hey, I don't like the Elite. I know these guys are snakes. Which I'm going to talk about a little bit over here in this. I don't trust anything that these guys are as like any type of paragons of virtue, or I don't trust that they have the best interests of the company as a whole in mind, as opposed to just their own, AEW is basically their playpen to do what they want to do. I've made my feelings clear on that. The Omega and Ospreay video from Wrestle Kingdom. I don't need to go into full freaking massive screaming detail about that shit again, because it's gonna freaking drain my voice and put me into a bad energy space. I'm not trying to get into a bad energy space, but I'm just pointing out. I know these guys are snakes. I know these guys are not to be trustworthy. I know what these guys did with the Bullet Club, what they brought into the Bullet Club, how they divided the team kayfabe wise. Not because that was the best interest of New Japan or even part of New Japan's plan, but just because it was the way they wanted to tell their personal stories to get their brand and get themselves over on being the Elite. Now, why the fuck Gato didn't pull the plug on them being part of Bullet Club by Wrestle Kingdom 2018, I will never understand. But you made your bet at that point. Because ever since then, look what the Bullet Club... Yeah, Bullet Club tried to get back to that whole international street team type vibe that they had before the Elite took over and turned it into pussy shit. But the idea of infighting and power struggles and who's going to betray who and who's going to kick who out has been a prominent factor ever since the Elite did what they did. I hate that about the booking of Bullet Club. Because that's the one thing that to me just completely destroyed. Bullet Club was supposed to be the picture of this is a united covenant of bad motherfuckers who are going to destroy this place unless the big top heroic baby faces are just as united and just as strong and better in their virtues than the Bullet Club are in their vices in order to be able to stop them. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's been happening ever since the Golden Elite era. Ever since the Elite era, it's been a bunch of division. That's been the Bullet Club story. I don't know why Gato thinks that this is good storytelling. It's honestly tiresome, dog. But it is what it is. And the Elite, I believe, are the main people responsible for this turn of events, for the way that things have gone. And because I saw them because I tried to be that New Japan guy, that Bullet Club guy back in the day. I had a different name at that time too. Some people might be able to catch on to who I was back then. Most likely you will not. But point is this. I saw what the Elite were doing with Bullet Club, and I saw honestly, the fact that most of these freaking fans in the West were identifying with their idea than with the original shit that got back that Prince Devitt set the foundation for, that AJ Styles made worldwide in the first place. I saw that many of these Western fans, because of their personal politics and sexual proclivities and other weirdness about a lot of people in the IWC nowadays, were more connecting with the Elite's garbage than with the actual Bullet Club. And that has forever tarred the perception of who the Bullet Club are in the West. And I strongly believe that what they have done, but not only in terms of like the way that they've got Meltzer setting up the rumor mill in their favor, but also in terms of the way that people have been booked in AEW, especially Bullet Club guests. And I could go in further detail about that when talking about Jay White and Juice Robinson, how they've been booked ever since they actually signed to AEW. I could go into detail about that. I honestly believe these guys sabotaged the idea of Bullet Club without them. Period. And they're using Tony Khan's stroke to continue doing more of the same. I don't like these guys. I think these guys are snakes. Now, granted, when I say that, that doesn't mean I'm on CM Punk's side in any of this shit either. Because the dude is, let's be clear. This dude is an asshole. Phil Brooks is an asshole. He's not a snake in the grass type of asshole, at least not as much as these guys are. But he's not good, bro. Let's not forget, this is the same motherfucker who left the wrestling business, tried to mock the wrestling business and say this fake world, this, that, and the third. I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, we know. It's predetermined. It's scripted. It's not real sport. There's a lot of shit to it other than just who's the best athlete or whatever. No, I get that. That's 100% the facts about professional wrestling, which is why I don't believe that people who invest in all this work rate garbage, which is the other half of the reason why people worship the ground the Elite walk on, is because of their athletic work rate. I don't believe that these people are actually looking out for what is best for the wrestling business, because it is a scripted entertainment game. Like point blank, out in the open, out front. But that doesn't mean that you came from that world. That world built you. What you did in that world made you who you are, got you the opportunity to even be halfway known outside. You're in UFC. You got to be in UFC. You got to do Marvel Comics despite not being an MMA trained fighter. You got to do Marvel Comics despite not having any type of freaking comic book experience. Now, granted, we've learned more about people in the comic book industry coming in and basically getting to make major decisions and make major changes to characters and brands without any prior established experience or love for the game or for the art. That's been more and more of a thing over the years as people have come in with political motivations. We get that. It is ridiculous what has happened to the comic book industry. But CM Punk, at the time that he got into being able to pen a couple of Thor books, this was not the nightmare that it became over time yet. It was not in that place yet. I could legitimately believe that a comic book company that's actually trying to tell stories would give this man a shot based on his wrestling experience and his noted fandom of Marvel. I could legitimately believe, just like I could legitimately believe before Punk himself actually pretty much taught Dana White that, nah, that's not going to work, that just like I could believe back then that you're going to give this guy who was a scripted wrestling world champion, which means he's traveled the world and done like long match sequences that require simulation of fighting over and over again. And yeah, he's got like a little bit of martial arts inspiration into the ring style of his offense. And he's a big time MMA fan, and being a real fighter was like one of his like pet dreams, just like comic books. So yeah, he's gonna chase that after leaving pro wrestling. And Dana White said, you know what? This guy, he's a big name. He's a marketable dude. He's money. So I'm gonna go ahead and give him that ball. He gave him that ball, and then Punk just embarrassed himself twice. To the point where Dana White had to publicly say he's fired. Hell, even the guy that beat him in the second fight was fired because both guys' performance was so humiliatingly bad. But yeah, there's that. There's the way that he has thumbed down his nose at all of his former peers in the wrestling business. I'm not even going to talk about the lawsuit because I actually believe that there was a case that I'm not going to say well, okay. Which lawsuit am I talking about? The lawsuit to WWE for the doctor who freaking prescribed him staph infection shit. To prescribe them Z-Packs instead of actually taking him to where he could actually get properly diagnosed for that MRSA staph infection. That shit could have killed. I believe there's some credence to that. So I'm not going to knock him for that lawsuit. I am going to knock him for the fact that him and Colt Cabana, him and his best friend Colt Cabana, who he broke the internet with that interview in 2014 after he got fired on his wedding day, all of a sudden they're fighting each other over goddamn money. They're suing each other in court over money. I'm also going to knock the fact that this dude, okay, let's talk about this fake world shit. Obviously, you know, he's got friends in that so-called fake world who obviously felt some type of way about his bullshit. And he even got to the point where like he had some of his old friends like Corey Graves and Samoa Joe pretty much being able to say that he straight up decided to disassociate from them just because they're still employed by WWE. Like, okay, I get it. You feel some type of way about not wanting to be around people who are still tied to that organization because you feel like that organization did you dirty. Okay. So why are you still talking? Why are you still talking that mad shit? Why are people asking you about why did, first off, and here's another freaking thing. Here's the part that really fucking got to my gears and made me realize this man is not a good person. This man tried to get AJ Styles cancel cultured over George Floyd black squares. I'm not even going to go into detail about George Floyd and what I actually think about him or about that situation. Needless to say, I don't like either George Floyd or that fucking cop. I don't like either one of them. I'm not even going to go into full detail about that, but because that's actually beside the point. Point is, AJ Styles didn't put black squares on his Instagram, and this freaking person with an axe to grind asked Punk about that. And Punk, who is also a person with an axe to grind, said, we all know what AJ Styles is. We all know back there. And, yeah, we all know back there. Who does that we include? Does that we include Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, guys who play video games with AJ practically every single day on the road whenever they're traveling together? Does that we include people like Omos this happened after Punk tried to freaking cancel culture AJ. AJ and Omos ended up worked together, and there was never any hint of issue. There was never even a remote backstage report about the two not getting along. And even like a year or two after their tag team had been broken up, Omos talks about AJ like he's his fucking brother. Oh, but y'all hate Omos, so I don't think so. Who cares what he has to say? All right. What about Tamatonga? Tamatonga. You know who he is. You know who the Tongans are. You know where Tonga is. The Pacific Islands, the same area as the Samoans. Not the same area, but like similar, like, okay, let me rephrase. Not necessarily the same area as the Samoans. It's a different ballgame. But they're Pacific Islanders just like the Samoans. They do not have, for the most part at least, well, actually I shouldn't even say for the most part, because like pretty much all the wrestling ones I know have like medium brown skin. But yeah, then they don't look Caucasian. They don't come from the same places. They don't speak the same tongues. They don't all have perfect English accents. But how many of them was AJ Styles around and got to know when he was back in New Japan Pro Wrestling? He was in Bullet Club with Tamatonga and Bad Luck Fale. They haven't said a single bad word about him. They have nothing but love for him. Speaking of Japan, he was in Japan, surrounded by a whole host of Japanese fans and Japanese talent. What have they had to say about him as far as how he treated them and how he was with them backstage? Nothing but love. Speaking of Polynesians, let's go to a Samoan. Not one from the Anoa'i family, but how about Samoa Joe? Samoa Joe was with Kaz and Daniels and AJ as part of a group backstage called the Triad in TNA. They were all best friends. And very noticeably, if you saw all the storylines that Kaz, Daniels, and AJ all got involved in together, it was practically bromances, bro. The only reason Joe never got into any kind of bromance type vibe with these guys is because Joe's just not that type of fuck. No. It's not even about what type of guy he is. No. Joe is too much of a freaking killer to have that vibe with anyone. Let's just put it like that. But yeah, I'm freaking veering off in the left field. That's not what I'm trying to do. Point is, you tried to cancel culture AJ Styles based off black squares when every single hint of anybody of how he's treated people, which is what actually fucking matters, says that he is a perfectly good dude who yeah, he's a Southern Christian. He's prone to saying, he's been prone to saying politically incorrect words in the past. You can probably look it up on YouTube if you want. I'm not going to try to freaking highlight that because I'm not trying to have people go after him. But yeah, he's a Southern Christian who has used politically incorrect words in the past before he ever like touched shores in WWE. But he never directed it at the people that you would think would be the target. He never directed it at the actual people that it would be a slur towards if he directed it at them. Number one. Number two, the people he said it to said it right back to him. So it's people busting each other's chops anyway. So I don't even know why I felt the need to mention it. Maybe because somebody's probably going to mention it and try to beat me to the punch and say, well, this proves that he's... No, it doesn't. It doesn't prove shit that you're trying to make it look like. How has he... the people he said that shit to? Who said it back to him, by the way? Nothing but respect. Nothing but either respect or friendship back and forth between them when they talk about each other seriously. So don't even try to pull that card. Do not try to pull that. But CM Punk tried to pull that card. I lost all the respect. I lost a ton of respect for him when I saw him do that. That was the moment where I fully realized this man ain't a good dude. So now he comes back to AEW. He comes back to wrestling through AEW like, what, last year, 2 years ago? And people who used to call him out on the dumb shit that he would say about the pro wrestling business suddenly started completely ignoring the stories of dumb shit he was saying about people in the wrestling business. BC Amplified. I saw BC Amplified, who I would say is kind of one of my favorite wrestling YouTubers, except there's a couple of things where he occasionally falls off the rails. And this would have been one of them, where I noticed that back then he was trying to give AEW mulligans because they were like, he felt the best chance to punch Vince McMahon in the mouth and force him to be competitive. So he wanted to give AEW all the mulligans. He gave them all the freaking breathing room that he possibly could to make the same type of mistakes that WWE would get roasted and raked over the coals for. So he did it. And Punk was one of those things. Punk came back to AEW. So, and he was supposed to be like this big help for them, for their business. So BC, he stopped talking about the bullshit that Punk was saying in the internet. Hell, no. He's not only stopped talking about it, he basically pretended that he stopped saying bullshit things and basically tried to give the man credit and say, oh, look, he's so positive now. He's found his love for wrestling again. And I'm like, are you paying attention? He's still saying dumb shit. No, but now he's doing it within the confines of the AEW cult, so we got to protect his ass. I get it now. I get it. Nah, we ain't playing that. I was never in agreement with that. That was one of the things that I was never in agreement with, to where, like, but it's not one that I specifically heavily called out, because I don't know if I ever got a chance to call that out. It's not one of the things that got me to be kind of, shadow banned from his shit. Yeah, I said shadow banned. I'm not even going to say blocked. Or I'm not even going to say DOS boot. I'm going to say shadow ban. Because it's that, it's to that level, basically. Because it's like, people don't have the right to call out an issue that they have. And here's the funny thing. The shit that he shadow banned me over, or one of the shit that he most likely shadow banned me over, was actually something that he now has come to the same position where I've been. About these wrestlers about how if these wrestlers are really that good, they should be able to be interesting even outside the ring. They shouldn't need 15 to 20 minute bangers every single night in order to be halfway captivating. And actually, if they do need that shit, it's actually counterproductive because unless they're actually in the ring doing the thing, doing the match sequences, unless that's all they have to them, they don't have any type of character or any type of identity to make people actually care about them before they get into the ring, then they're not going to be treated as that special when they actually do get in the ring. Now he's finally on that same page with me on this. And this was one of the things that I was kind of relentlessly calling out for about a month or two before he freaking blocked me. But again, I'm kind of going off the rails. The main disagreement I had that I'm actually trying to point out, not only with BC, but with probably a lot of people in the community, is we want to give CM Punk these mulligans. We want to take it for granted that either he's not saying this stupid stuff that he's saying, or what he's saying is actually good just because he's now in AEW. I was never on that page. The shit that he was saying about the way he was sitting on the business was shady before he went to AEW, and it remains shady to me when he got into AEW. And then he exploded at the media scope. Actually, let's not even talk about the media scope. It's not even the first side of it. Even within AEW, when this dude is talking and doing interviews, he actually did an interview with Jim Ross that was part of the show, where he talked about Eddie Guerrero doing favors or doing business to help him out, and him now wanting to do business to help out the younger talent. Bitch, you're not supposed to say that as part of the show. As part of the show, these guys are supposed to be coming at you to try to beat you to make a name for themselves. And what did we see? Yeah, he worked with some guys. He gave some guys some matches where they got to look, where they kind of got to show their stuff against him. But who actually got over? Who actually got put into a stronger position because they worked with Punk than they were in before they worked with Punk at that time? Absolutely nobody. And then until he finally gets into that big time feud with Max MJF, basically that basically deals out with how his leaving the business would have affected a young fan at the time that he left in 2014. And MJF being that young fan who went on to not only enter the business, but to be a bigger kayfabe asshole than CM Punk ever was. He's the dark reflection of CM Punk's ego. And the idea of Punk looking himself in the mirror and having that story and being confronted with that ghost of his past who he never knew. And the fact that these guys went at each other in these promos and went into deep and personal details and levels, and the fact that they were willing to that they were willing to inflict bloody pain on each other in ways that actually meant something. Looking at you, Mox, blading every week to the point where it's meaningless. That story was extremely captivating in the way that it was done at that time. Unfortunately, it kind of set the pattern for MJF stories going forward, including his feud with Wardlow, his next feud after that, the way that he handles his feuds right now as the world champion. It set the formula. You got to go through my guys or through guys that I put in your path before you can get to me. That was the worst part of the Punk versus MJF feud to take into and copy into future feuds for MJF. That's the part you didn't want to copy over. At Tony Khan, that's exactly the part you did copy over. Why? I do not understand. But in effect, you still, at the very least, I can say that MJF got over. Or got a little bit more over. Not necessarily because of Punk himself, but because of his work with him. And of course, you got the inconsistency with Hangman and Mox and the world title and the injuries and this, that, and the third. And why in the blue fuck did Tony Khan decide to make it an interim title? Come on. Let's just dissect the facts. CM Punk's AEW run so far has been a disappointment. Let's be real. It's been a disappointment. It's been a disappointment in so many ways. The Elite are exactly who I expected them to be, which is good for the niche, not good for the overall product. But CM Punk is a guy who he fell short of the mark for what he was supposed to do, to be perfectly honest. And here's my deal. When it comes to the media scrum, when it comes to the all-out business, Punk freaking going off, freaking just completely losing his cool. To the point where it's actually possible that his brain is not 100% like screwed on tight enough for him to continue to be handling and taking the pressures of being around a locker room full of guys whose mentality about the professional wrestling business is different than his own. Especially different in a bad way to where it can aggravate his ass. Like, let's call it. He just completely lost his cool. And he freaking flew off the handle with that media scrum. Part of me was like, finally, somebody's actually coming out and saying what needs to be said about the Elite and about their friends in the wrestling media. That's part of me saying that. The other part of me is like, dog, you're making this whole ship look bad and you're supposed to be like the main dude here. You're supposed to be the guy taking this company over the top. You're making everybody look bad. How's that for good business? And then you got the Elite who their snake-like behavior is what helped exacerbate the problem. And I'm all suddenly reminded about what they were snake-like about, which is about the whole Colt Cabana deal. The idea, either Jericho or the Bucks or whoever, freaking got it across to Meltzer and Alvarez that CM Punk supposedly is the reason why Colt Cabana suddenly disappeared from Impact. Now, a lot of people could easily believe that. So can a lot of people easily believe that CM Punk is the reason why Jay Lethal was booked like almost non-existently for his first half a year in AEW. And considering the issues between Punk and Lethal surrounding AJ Lee. But yeah, it was easy to believe both of those stories. The Cabana one was the one that people circulated around the back, or circulated to Meltzer, and him and Alvarez ended up kind of reporting on it, talking about it, speculating on it. And then Hangman Page alludes to it in a promo during his program with Punk for the world title, talking about how you talk about you're a champion for workers' rights. It's not how you've been displaying in the AEW locker room. I'm saving AEW from you. And all this crap that Hangman said, going into business for himself. And that actually set Punk off to where he freaking went off on Hangman during a promo when he was supposed to be fighting Mox. This is a full freaking volatile situation. The Elite being the greatest narrative spinners for the IWC with the help of the freaking newsletter people and with the help of the dirt sheets, the Elite help spin everything in their favor for the IWC marks. And CM Punk is the most volatile. I'm not dealing with this horse shit type of guy. Even though he gets up to his own share of horse shit as well. And that whole freaking powder keg exploded in disaster it all out. First with the media scrum, him freaking going off. And then the Elite, specifically the Young Bucks especially, going over to his goddamn locker room like they want to take him up on his challenge to freaking say, if you got anything, if you have a problem with what I said, come take it up with me. They come to his locker room, knock it on it like they're taking him up on his challenge. You're supposed to be executive vice president of this company, right? Why the fuck are you going after this guy? Like you want to start a fight. But that's exactly what they did. They came at this guy, and it became a fight, and everybody got suspended, and everybody got stripped of their titles, including the Elite. They won their Trios Championships at the same time, too. Same night. Now, here's the problem. Tony Khan had the opportunity to be decisive in this matter. Here's what I would have done if I was Punk. If I was Khan. Fire CM Punk and strip Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks completely of their EVP positions. Now, okay, I'm being told, and I've mentioned this in other circles, and I've said, and I've gotten back the response that, well, the MVPs don't really have any power anymore anyway. It's all symbolic. I'm like, first off, that's not entirely true. Even though they don't have direct booking power anymore, you know they have influence on these on the decisions in the back. And it comes to like the tag team division, the Young Bucks, the women's division, Omega. Omega's also got power over the video game. Young Bucks have power over merch. So you know that these guys still have input and influence. They just don't have direct booking power anymore. But people want to say, oh, they have absolutely no power. They're just wrestlers in the back now. The EVP title is just honorary. Then what is the harm in taking it from them? Obviously, the EVP title means something in terms of power or at least influence in the back. And obviously, Tony Khan didn't have the balls to strip it from them. It's like he didn't have the balls to fire CM Punk. In my opinion, you do both. You make both of those decisions flat out in the moment. Because that's what needs to be done to show a strong hand and to show that this is not going to be the inmates running the asylum. That this is, in fact, your company. But that's not what he did. That's not what he did. The Elite still have their titles, their EVP titles. And in fact, they get judges being completely blameless in this situation after the so-called investigation, which I think is just complete BS. And meanwhile, Punk, he's injured and suspended and prejudged as the guilty party, but we're still not going to fire his ass. What? This is complete nonsense. This whole Collision brand split should not be happening because of CM Punk. It should be happening because you have overbloated your roster with 300 fucking people. That is the reason why you should be doing this Collision brand split. It should not be because of CM Punk or the Elite. But it exactly is because of CM Punk or the Elite. And that's part of the problem with what's going on right now. Fast forwarding to right now. And because it's about CM Punk, all of a sudden, Tony is scared to make the announcement that it's going to take place at the United Center. He makes like he's going to make that announcement this past Dynamite. He comes on and says big announcement and stuff because Warner Media finally revealed that part of the TNT lineup is AEW Collision on Saturdays, and we've already been hearing all this stuff about Collision involving Punk, and will Punk come back, and this, that, and the third. And then all of a sudden, and now we're hearing about this list of demands. We're hearing about him getting into it with Alvarez. We're hearing about him probably trying to demand that Ace Steel be brought back, because Ace Steel was the one person that got fired from that fight. I don't know why. No, I do know why. You had to do something to not be a complete bitch, but come on. Just Ace Steel, that's it? That's the only guy? That's the only guy? You gotta be kidding me. No. That's weak sauce, Tony. That's weak sauce, Mr. Khan. But I'm going off in the left field. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm actually still on topic. But come on. This is ridiculous. Why is it because of the issues between these people that this brand split, that this new AEW brand split is happening? Why are you making it about this? Why is it about this? It shouldn't be about this. They announced the Collision is going to be part of the Saturday nights now as part of the new lineup. They don't announce a new media rights deal because that was an unsubstantiated rumor that was going to be a part of the package or part of the announcements. And you had freaking AEW cult marks getting ready to say, look, AEW is about to make $1 billion off its programming. They love us. Yeah, no, they didn't make that announcement. They announced Collision on Saturdays, but they didn't announce that AEW is getting $1 billion. Which, even if it was that, I mean, come on. Raw and SmackDown get $1 billion each in their packages. No. Not number one. $2 billion each in their multimedia deals. Plus the deal with Saudi Arabia for about, I don't know how many billions. So it ain't nothing to freaking brag about if AEW makes a $1 billion deal. So Tony Khan would not be bragging about that. But the AEW culture will. And guess what? That's not even true. But yeah, they announced Collision. And Tony Khan decides to make his big announcement on Dynamite, which we're all supposedly thinking is going to be the announcement of the United Center being the site of the show, which would obviously mean CM Punk. Or at least would obviously be a hint at CM Punk. But what does he do? He goes, we don't have a set location. Come back next week. You coward! You coward! You know you're going to do the United Center because you know you're aiming to bring Punk back at that show. Just because you don't have all your ducks in a row because you're a bitch, not a decisive boss, doesn't mean you back out of making an announcement. People are already sick and tired of your big announcements that are not actually big announcements anymore. To the point where they're not even giving it credibility to tune in for $1 million anymore off the announcements. You've already worn out the cachet from that. You have a chance to actually make a major announcement about the beginning of this next new program that you're going to be bringing in. It's going to be a part of the wrestling show canon of AEW. But you bitch out of it because you don't have Punk completely locked in? Because you're not sure how you're going to do this thing with Ace Steel? Are you kidding me? No. If you're Tony Khan and you're trying to freaking grab the bull by the balls for the first time in your goddamn life, what you do is you announce the United Center, whether you have Punk or not. Then what you do is you talk Then what you do is you go backstage, you talk to Jay White, you talk to Juice Robinson, and then you bring in maybe a couple other guys who you think would make good for a faction with them, and you say, we're going to build the next version. We're going to build Collision around not only CM Punk, we're also going to build it around Bullet Club Gold. And what we're going to do, if Punk doesn't show, we have an easy plan to get you guys over as the top heel act on the show. Jay, first things first, we're going to start with you not playing around when it comes to Ricky Starks anymore. I know that we've been trying to 50-50 the whole thing to where we don't want either you or Ricky looking too weak against the other, but we really should not have been doing. But we really should have gone about it in a better way. Not had you take 11 minutes to beat a freaking luchador who does a freaking dancing rope walk Hurricane Rana spot. Had you actually take that spot and take the 11 minutes to beat that guy when we don't have any plans for him beyond having him come on occasionally and do banger matches and lose. No. First off, that's another freaking part of the booking philosophy of Tony Khan that absolutely sucks. That match completely, to me, told me that you're booking Jay White as just another guy. You don't have any plans for him to be a special top heel. You're booking him as just another guy on the roster. Because if he wasn't just another guy on the roster, you would have understood that the main thing that made Jay White special in New Japan Pro Wrestling was how smart his character is, how uncharacteristically common sense he is, or not uncharacteristic, it is characteristic for him, but it's uncanny how much common sense he plays into shit, how he didn't how he would pull himself out of position. For example, like Hangman can't freaking hit him with the what's that? No, not the ripcord lariat. Buckshot. He's out of position for Hangman's buckshot lariat deliberately in order to frustrate Hangman into giving up on doing the move. He expends the littlest amount of energy possible getting his shoulder up after getting hit by a big move by Kenny Omega to where the freaking audience has to see a replay to realize that Jay White legally kicked out. And then they're super impressed. Even when he started using Gato as his interference runner, it was so much smoother than the way that most people think these interference heel gimmicks go. That when the same company, the same stable, tried it in 2020 with Evil and Dig Togo, it was looked at as a poor man's version extraordinaire. This fucking dude was so good at being irritating, so good at being at portraying this idea that he's throwing people off their game by being slick at how he does his business. But you're gonna have him freaking take a dancing rope walk Hurricane Rana and take 11 minutes to beat a schmuck who you have no plans for? And then you're going to have a feud with Ricky Starks, somebody who you also had unjustly cooled off because Chris Jericho doesn't like the fact that Ricky Starks had good things to say about CM Punk, and obviously Jericho's on the elite side in that whole debacle of a mess that I'm talking about. So fresh off of almost beating MJF for the world title, Ricky Starks ends up in a feud with Chris Jericho, where he beats Chris Jericho first, and then gets put through the ringer with Jericho's Appreciation Society, having to go through them to beat Jericho again. No damn sense. Absolutely no sense. So by doing that, all of a sudden Ricky Starks looks a whole lot cooler. Not in terms of cool as in badass, but cool as in okay temperature. His temperature has cooled down a lot more in terms of his momentum compared to how it was just before the feud with Jericho. You actively made him worse. And then right after that is when you have him freaking go into this feud with Juice Robinson, where it looks like it's just Juice, but then you bring in Jay. But Jay cannot make quick work of Ricky. Okay, Sean Spears came in the middle of this too. Great. Then Sean Spears and Ricky Starks should be losing every single time. At least if Jay White's in the freaking ring. Tag match, they should be losing. Ricky should be beating Juice. Spears should be losing to Jay. And then at the pay-per-view, the next pay-per-view coming up, that's when you have Ricky and Jay go one-on-one, and you have Jay beat Ricky. Plain and simple. That's how you should be doing this. But obviously, because of the politics, because of the CM Punk politics when it comes to Ricky, and the Bullet Club politics when it comes to Jay, you're not going to get the right thing done by either one of these guys. You have Ricky going into this feud cooled down by Jericho. And then you're going to have Jay struggle to ever put him away. No. This is fucking trash. If I was Tony Khan and I was trying to grab the bull by the horns on this, I would have had a different plan the minute Jay came back. The minute Jay White came back, I would have had a different plan. The whole assault on Ricky Starks shit, okay, let that happen by itself. Let that be a thing on its own, and let Ricky kind of work through Juice and through the interferences and run-ins and shit to try to get to Jay. Meanwhile, Jay has 5, 6, 7-minute matches against job guys on your roster where he decisively beats them by showing off his smarts. Until eventually, Ricky beats Juice to get to Jay, and Ricky versus Jay is booked at the pay-per-view, and Jay beats Ricky at the pay-per-view. And then you have the conversation with Jay and Juice about Bullet Club Gold being the top heel act for Collision. And you have that conversation, and you and you realize that if you don't have Punk locked in, you need to make a plan for this United Center show. You announce the United Center to be the beginning of Collision anyway, and then you talk to these guys and you say straight up, if Phil doesn't show up, we're going to have you two or you three, or we're going to have you guys we're going to have you guys basically tear up the show. We're going to have you two and another 2 or 3 guys. I think I personally have a good picture of who those other 2 or 3 guys should be, but I'm going to reserve that for maybe a different video. But you go to these guys and you basically say that y'all are going to be tearing up the show. You two are going to be tearing up the show, and you guys are going to be tearing up the show. It's going to be like guys are going to get beat up left and right, at least one in-ring beat up and at least one backstage beat up from both of your sides. And then you, Jay, are going to, at some point, use CM Punk's music. And then you're going to come out instead of Punk, and the fans are going to boo the living shit out of you at the United Center. And then you're going to reveal that you guys are all working together and that these guys over here are the newest members of Bullet Club Gold. And Bullet Club is officially taking its claim over AEW because Bullet Club is the reason AEW got to be built in the first place. There. Now, if CM Punk is going to be at the show, if he is locked in for the debut of Collision, you obviously leave out the whole playing of Cult of Personality, and you make your claim over it. You try to make your claim over the show or whatnot, and then Punk becomes the big damn hero that leads a charge to fend you off. Let's actually leave it like this. CM Punk and FTR. Oh, no. Let me actually go even further. I think I know exactly how I would do this. You would have the establishment of of Bullet Club Gold as an actual faction happen pretty much almost every single way that it normally does. Pretty much happen the entire, basically be the focus of the night. In terms of stuff that actually happens. Meanwhile, the anticipation is still there for CM Punk to come in and save the day. But you're making it seem like, oh, you expecting somebody to come and save you? Get out of here. No, this is not your show. This is not about who you thought was supposed to be the man. This is about our show. This is our time. This is Bullet Club taking our claim over this company. And then FTR comes out to avenge getting beat up in the back by one or two of these, by either side of this new Bullet Club. But they don't come alone. They pretty much tell you point blank. Like they actually take the stick, they take the microphone, and they say, "You guys really think this is about you? You really think this is your show? This is your house? You've taken this over. This all belongs to you?" No, it doesn't. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna introduce you the guy that we all know that everybody in Chicago has really been waiting for, and then we're gonna march down to that ring, and we're gonna kick your ass. And that's when CM Punk's music hits, and he comes out to. We're not gonna do the whole soak it in and hero. We're not gonna do the whole like. We're not gonna do it the way that we did it with Punk's debut. You can't replicate that, so we wouldn't even try. So this is why I would do it this way. I would have him come out with his music as part of this segment. He comes out, maybe kind of soaking it in for a little bit in terms of like coming out slowly and looking out at the crowd and realizing that they still have love for him. But he stands side by side with FTR. They put their hands around each other to kind of show that solidarity as a group. And it's like, "You ready? Yeah, we're ready." And then they all come down and they run down and they have their brawl, and that's when they and any two other guys, there's two other people that the Bullet Club were just beating up. That's when they like fight them off, and basically you have that standoff. Actually, as a matter of fact, you have that standoff. You have CM Punk and FTR. You have CM FTR get in the ring, face off against Jay White, Juice Robinson, and at least one of the, and whoever the best of the other guys is in terms of this whole Bullet Club thing. I'm really struggling not to say the name I think should be in this position. But yeah, you have that 3-man face-off with CM Punk and Jay White, Switchblade Jay White, front and center of that face-off, of that standoff. And then you have that fight. And you have the Bullet Club starting to take the advantage until the other two victims get back up and get involved. And then suddenly the tables get turned, and CM Punk, FTR, and the people that they just saved are all of a sudden standing tall. And the new Bullet Club, they're kind of receding. They're kind of pulling back. They're receding. They're pulling back. They're retreating. But it doesn't look like a bitch moment because CM Punk just came back, and CM Punk just came back and forced them to powder. So it's fine. Not only is it fine, it's the freaking hottest thing. You now have a setup. CM Punk is your main guy as a babyface. Switchblade Jay White is your main guy as a heel. And this shit just writes itself if you book it right. But who am I, right? Who am I? I'm just a fan who nobody really pays attention to. But overall, this was the shit that you should have been able to do. And look, I'm over here saying CM Punk ain't no hero. You should have freaking got rid of him. You should have fired him. But if you're not going to fire him, if you're going to actually bring him back for this freaking Collision show, then have a plan. Not only a plan for his return to actually go down in an epic way, in a very different way than his debut in AEW. But also, like, use either a plan to establish a top heel act against him, or to cover the tracks in spite of him not being there, one way or the other. You should already have a sure thing in the back. The 100% certainty of Collision should already be set. Bullet Club Gold is going to be expanded or merged into a bigger group and is going to be the top heel focus of Collision. That should already be set in stone. Now, whether that ends up being cemented with mad heel heat by trolling with Punk's music because he doesn't show up, or whether that's set up to antagonize Punk and FTR because he is there, and they are part of the people that got beat up, and so he already knows that we're going after them. We're going after the club. That should be a matter of, do you have Punk? That should be the only thing that's up for grabs, whether you have Punk or not. But you should already have a plan for both situations. If you have Punk, you set it up so him and FTR can be the main guys opposing Bullet Club. If you don't, you have them troll with his music to get massive heat in Chicago. That should already be the plan. But obviously, they're not booking Jay White strongly enough for that to be the plan. And obviously, the fact that Tony Khan got scared to announce the United Center means that, quite frankly, I don't even think he has a plan. So really, that's the long and short of it. There are no heroes in the Elite versus CM Punk debacle. The whole spirit of the AEW Collision brand split is corrupted because it's about these guys not being able to work together rather than being about actually expanding the opportunities for your way too bloated roster being the first priority. And the fact that Tony ran scared of announcing the United Center, when I can already come up with a plan in an hour for how you're going to work a United Center debut for Collision, whether you have Punk or not, automatically tells you he doesn't have a plan. And the part that and the fact is, AEW has a chance to actually breathe some shelf life into the original concept of Bullet Club. And that honestly would be my version of the plan for Collision, with or without Punk. But obviously, you would have to try to get past the Elite's political bullshit and their disapproval and their threats to go back to Japan or to try to go to WWE if they don't get that shit brought down or pulled down or made to look bad. Or no, there's too much bullshit. There's too much corruption, and there's no command of the scene. There's no superior command of the scene when it comes to AEW. It's the exact opposite of the Vince McMahon problem, where the dude gets too set in his way, where like Vince McMahon is too set in his way sometimes. I'll venture the same thing about Triple H. These guys sometimes get too set in their ways, too set in their ideas of what things should be, and yet because of their own personal whims, they end up making bad decisions. They also listen to people, and in my opinion, they also listen to guys when it comes to politics. They also fall prey to that shit, and it ends up harming the products as well with WWE. With Tony Khan, it's not even the fact that whether they listen to they're set in their ways, and the guys who go according to their ways are the guys who they listen to politically. With Tony Khan, it's the exact opposite. He listens to people politically before he even has ways. And obviously, he's letting the inmates run the asylum, and we see exactly how that's going. You got the situation with CM Punk and the Elite, where there's absolutely zero, where there's no winners here. There's no heroes here. Nobody looks good here. The Elite, there's finally attention called to the shadiness and the really not the non-productive nature of their overly tight relationships with the dirt sheets. CM Punk, his volatile nature makes him completely difficult to trust in the locker room. And Tony Khan looks like a bitch with no authority and no sense of control and no sense of respect from his employees because he's busy trying to be everybody's friend. His employees and or independent contractors. It's hazy when it comes to these pro wrestlers. Let's be real. But yeah, it's a joke. It's a joke. That whole situation should have been either handled immediately when it happened in September, or it should have been handled heading into Collision. Either Punk should not be there. Either Punk should not be even talked about as part of AEW anymore, and the Elite should be stripped of the executive vice president status, or you should have already announced the United Center because you already have a backup plan to establish a top heel act, whether against CM Punk or in spite of CM Punk. That should already, one or the other. You should already have that. That should already be set, but it's not because Tony Khan is not a real leader. And the people who he has around him, who he's trusting with most power and influence in his company, they're looking out for their own personal benefits more than the best interest of the company. It's a good gig if you can get it, but no good boss should ever give it. That's all I got when it comes to pro wrestling. Where I'm standing right now, the Heat game is about to actually start in about 10-15 minutes. And by the time this is uploaded, you'll be already out of the first half. So this is ridiculous that I'm even still talking right now. I said I was going to try to take like 10, 20, 30 minutes, and here I am. It's already well past an hour. So I should be dipping right now. So this is all I got. And I think I've pretty much made my point. And then some. Stay gold. That's all.